Hey y'all, it's Jodi here, and you're listening to my flippin' podcast.
Y'all, you just gotta embrace the suck.
I'm in my 30s. I have 3 kids,
All born in different decades.
selling houses, flipping houses, renting houses, raising kids, random farm animals.
I can't see 'em.
Hey y'all, welcome to the latest episode of My Flippin' Podcast. I'm really excited today because I have a dear friend, client, and just overall just inspirational person here with me today. And this is Miss Aqua Addison, Sargent First Class Aqua Addison. So, and that is a relatively new title that I want to get into in just a minute. But, you know, when I started this podcast and I was thinking about who do I want to have on, who has a great story, who has that major grit that I talked about, and Aqua was at the top of my list for sure. Because I don't even know how to say it without using a cuss word. I mean, she is a bad woman, let me tell you. And
You're really overselling this.
No, I'm not. Okay, so when we first met, you were young.
Very.
Yeah, I mean, we're still young, but you were really young then. And you guys were married. You and Russ were married. No kids.
No.
Living downtown. And you were in the National Guard
Yes.
at that point as just a reservist.
Yep.
Is that the
An
correct term?
M-Day. We call them M-Day.
Okay.
They just do the 1 weekend a month and the 2 weeks in the summer. And that's pretty much their obligation.
Yeah.
Outside of that, they get to go and do their regular civilian jobs, what they love on the side, and be with family. And
So how old were you when you joined the Guard?
oh my gosh, I think I was 18.
18.
I had not graduated high school yet. I was in my senior year.
I didn't know that.
Yes.
I knew you were young, but I didn't know you were that young. So what made you decide, was your family have a history of service, or was it just something that was...
My dad had a brother who was in the service. He actually died while he was in service. But other than that, we had not had anyone else in our family who had served before. But I'd always really thought that it was such a great concept, the idea, patriotism. But I'm going to be very brutally honest with you.
Yeah.
And so I did not have the scholarships to pay for college or anything like that. My family were not very wealthy people, and I did not want to try to put my family out to pay for my school, but I knew I wanted to go to college and I wanted to get an education. So I was going to find a way to do that by whatever means necessary. And so I thought, well, you know, all the branches of service, you can get an education there. So let me just look, and I'm going to find the one that I like, and I'm going to do that. So my dad and I, when I told him what I wanted to do, first, that was a very big discussion.
Oh, I cannot imagine having
yes.
that talk with your daddy. I know Aqua's daddy very well.
He and my mom were not crazy about the idea in the slightest.
Yeah.
And so I basically told them, I am a grown woman of 18 and I will make my own decisions. I mean, looking back now, that probably wasn't the best attitude to have, but it was one of my best decisions.
Yeah.
So my dad was like, okay, you're very headstrong. I'm not going to fight you on this, but we're going to make a very informed decision. So I was like, I can get on board with that. So we interviewed with a recruiter from every single branch of service.
Wow.
And was like, hey, what do you guys have to offer? What is it like? You know, tell me about it. Here are my life goals. Let's see how this fits with this branch of service. And at the end of the day, the best fit for me was the Guard.
Yeah.
I wasn't one of those crazy teenagers who was just, I want to get out and see the world.
Yeah.
No, I love where I live.
Yeah.
I love the small town feel. I love being close to family. I have a really big family, and we're all very close. So I wanted to be around that. That's kind of my support, my anchor, my rock.
Right.
And so I really didn't want to leave that, and I want to go to school. And so the Guard was a great fit for that.
So I'm going to hit on one thing that just stood out to me, and that goes back to my grit, and that's the responsibility part of it, the extreme ownership, because you knew you had this circumstance where no scholarships, parents didn't really, you didn't have that fat college fund. I didn't either. And you knew that you wanted to go to school. And I know your parents, they would have done whatever to put you through school.
They would have.
They really would have. So I want to give them credit where credit's due. But I also know you, and I know that does not surprise me that you were not going to allow that, even at 18, to happen, because you've always been very independent. And so you just said, how can I? You didn't say I can't go. There's no way. You said, how can I make this happen? And then found your solution through serving our country, which is so admirable. And that's probably one of the things that I love most about you. I'm always attracted to people who are enigmas, who are unusual, because I first meet you, and Aqua has impeccable taste. I mean, every house that she's ever lived in is just gorgeous. I mean, I love everything that she does design wise, and you're not this huge big woman, that you think of. Sometimes you think, you have this like stereotypical idea of what a sergeant first class is going to look like, and you don't necessarily fit those stereotypes, but you have made it your career, which is incredible. So let's talk about that. Like, how did you? So let's back up. You're 18. You decide to join the Guard, and you want to go to college. What was your goal at that point? Because it wasn't a career in the Guard.
No, I joined the Guard to do one initial contract, to get my degree, to pay for school, and then I was getting out.
Yeah.
Because I never thought or even imagined that it would be a career. I was never I wasn't super girly girl, but I was never crazy tomboyish where I was like, I'm gonna shoot guns and attack people and, get bad guys. No, that was not me growing up. Maybe my sister, but not me. I played sports and stuff in school, but I just wasn't like a crazy tomboy. I never had that huge intimidating factor. You didn't meet me on the street and you're like, she's going to beat somebody up today.
No.
You don't look at me and see that on the street. You're like, no. So I was going to just go to school, get my degree, and then I was going to get out. And I wanted to be a teacher. I wanted to be an elementary school teacher, believe it or not.
Wow. I didn't know that.
Yes.
So what changed? What happened?
So I got in the Guard as an MDay. I did it for a few years, and then one day we had a full-time position open up at our unit. The admin NCO that we had, who basically does like human resources, they were transferring out, and it was going to be what they call an off-the-street hire, where they are hiring in someone new who is not already full-time to be full-time and give them that opportunity. So we had our battalion come down, and they were kind of helping wrap some things up and get organized for the next incoming person. So they're like, hey, who can help file and do little things like this? Who can be organized? And the one thing they teach you first off in the military is you don't ever volunteer for anything. So I'm like, not raising my hand, and they're like, you.
Oh, gosh.
I was like,
You look organized.
You look like you can organize paperwork. Come here. So I was like, great. Can't wait. So I go in there. I'm working with them. I'm learning. I generally pick up on things relatively quickly.
Yes.
So it was just going really well. And so the people I was working with was like, wow, you seem to have a good grasp on this. You're learning very quickly. You're easy to teach. We feel like you would be a great fit for this. Why don't you apply? We had the interviews, and I was like, no, I'm okay. I was like, I'm about to get out. My ETS is coming up, and I'm jumping ship. And I was like, so no, thank you. And they're like, no, we really think you should. And I was like, no, I'm okay. So then they go talk to my commander at the time, and they tell him the recommendation. And so he comes and talks to me, and he's like, you're going to apply for this job.
Oh, my gosh.
And my commander at the time was this big, burly, like 6'8" monstrosity of a man who you just don't look at him and say no.
Right.
So I was like, okay. So I go home and I tell Russ about it. I'm so nervous because I've never really had to interview for anything not like this in my life. I don't know anything about it. I am by trade in the Guard in 88 Mike. I drive trucks.
Oh.
Okay. Yes, that was my MOS going in. I drove trucks, all kinds of trucks. And the only reason
I
chose,
love that. That just adds to this.
and I chose that because the armory for that was right next to JSU where I was going to school.
Oh my gosh.
And I was in ROTC there. So it worked out really nice. Everything
Mm-hmm.
was right there, all compact in a nice little box. And so I go home and I tell my husband Russ, and he's like, yeah, you should put in for that. It sounds really great. And so I get together my packet. I actually put my packet in. The interview process, they have a 2-day interview. There are 14 applicants. I am number 1 on the very first day. I walk in, and when I tell you, I don't know if I took a breath the whole time I was in there. It's a wonder I didn't pass out. And they scraped me off the floor. But I left. I called Russ. I was in tears. I was like, that was the worst thing I've ever had to do in my life. It went terrible.
No.
I'm sure they hate me. I was like, so I'm just going to get out and it's going to be over. So they made it through day 2 of interviews. And within maybe an hour after they finished the last interview, I got a phone call and they had offered it to me. They were like, we would love to have you if you'll work with us. And I was like, oh my gosh. And I think I actually screamed in the ear of the major who called me on the phone, like squealed. I screamed in his ear.
Goodness.
And then I had to apologize. But I was like, yes, of course, I'll take it. And I was an E4 then, a specialist. So that was many years ago, and now I'm the operations officer at the 20th Special Forces Group here in Gadsden, and I just picked up my E7.
I know. I saw that. So I want to unpack a couple of things there. So basically, one thing that I love about this story is that you embraced opportunities that came along, because a lot of times we feel like we have this great plan, we have this vision for our life, and we're this is what I'm going to do, and this is how I'm supposed to, but a lot of times our plan and God's plan do not line up.
No, they're not the same.
And in hindsight, it's always easier in hindsight to see that was the plan all along, that was the path that you were supposed to be on. But I think so many people get this tunnel vision, and they lose sight. They can't see the opportunities that come along. So even though this was something that you had not planned on, something that was scary and new, you embraced the opportunity, and it's turned into this very this wonderful career for you. And so how long ago was that?
Oh wow. 6 years ago?
6
Maybe
years.
6 years ago?
Because it's funny, because before this we started, we were talking a little bit about it, and I said I have to equate houses and timelines because we've been together for a while, and so that would have been when we sold the first house downtown. It was, you were not full time, or you were. So I think it was like right along there.
I was very newly, just hired on full time, and we had decided to sell and to move.
Yes, because you had this great career opportunity.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, so exciting. So, all right. So, E7. That's impressive. And then, so before you were awarded that, is that the right word? Pinned. My son's in the Navy, and so I don't know sometimes if those terms go back
Some
and
of them
forth.
do,
Some don't. They say pinned as well. But so before you were pinned, you let's talk about the airborne adventure there. And also I want to talk about what it is that you do. So you just threw out this very long title, but what I picked up was Special Forces.
Right.
Because that sounds so awesome. I mean, does it not? It's like, so what is that? Can you tell us? Is it classified?
I can't tell you all the details. I can give you some. So I'm at a Special Forces unit. However, let me just say, I am not Special Forces. I work with the Special Forces at the unit. What we do at the battalion level there is we coordinate all of their training plans. So we give them the resources that they need to prepare them for what they do when they mobilize and they go overseas. We set up those scenarios. We make sure they have the ammunition they need to, fire their weapons and all the training sites and stuff like that.
Okay.
So that's what we do. We schedule and plan and, what I was hired to do from the beginning and plan and be organized.
Yeah.
So that's what I do there. I basically help organize training and make sure that they have what they need. I put in orders for people so that they're getting paid when they're doing all these things. Making sure they have their travel arrangements set up, hotels, flights, all of the things that have to go on in the background to take care of soldiers that you don't really think about or realize have to take place.
I was just about to say that exact thing, that's probably a whole, a whole section of the military or the armed forces that I never even thought about, but it makes total sense that that's a huge deal. I mean, you have to have that logistical training and everything to be successful in the battlefield.
For all the cool things you see going on out front, there are so many little things that are happening in the background that no one ever sees or knows about, but if they didn't happen, then the things that go on out front wouldn't happen. The soldiers have to be fed.
Yeah.
So someone has to order that food and prepare that food and get it out there. The soldiers have to have bullets. Well, you have to account for all of those and, submit requests and things like that. And they have to have somewhere to sleep. Someone has to plan all of that.
And hopefully not a parking garage.
Hopefully not a parking garage.
That was a little jab, sorry. We won't go into politics. We won't do that.
Don't get me in trouble.
Yes. But so now you're A7 and you end up jumping out of airplanes.
Yes.
Several airplanes, right? Yes. And was that something that you had to do or that you wanted to do? I know that your husband, who was in the room with us, being silent, was very nervous about this. But he's a praying man, so I was not nervous.
So it is a combination of both. Something that is a requirement for the unit that I'm at now, to something I actually wanted to do. So
that doesn't surprise me. Not at all.
So something that people who know me know, I love change. I love for things to change, which is why you and I meet so frequently.
Yes.
Because we buy and sell houses like we change our underwear.
Yes.
So because if I'm not changing houses, I'm changing the living room in the house. I'm moving things around. I constantly need something fresh and new in my life. It keeps me on my toes.
Yeah.
I don't like to fall into the mundane. Otherwise, I feel lazy and I get bored super fast.
Yeah.
So, bursts of adrenaline are kind of things that I crave. So I'm like, it would be so cool to jump out of an airplane. So every year since I have been in the Guard, when we submit what we call our EPS packets for promotion each year, you have to sign this little thing that says, would you consider going airborne? Every year I check yes. And every year I never get offered anything airborne. And then God just kind of played it to where I transferred he opened a door from where I was previously in Birmingham to be able to transfer to an airborne unit. And so when that door of opportunity opened, they were like, hey, do you mind jumping out of planes? I was like, do I mind jumping out of planes? I'd love to. Let's do it now. So I was super excited about that.
Now, had you ever been skydiving or
no.
anything? Okay, no. You just thought this is going to be great.
This is going to be great.
Yeah, okay.
So we did that, and I transferred there, and I passed my PT test that you need to take. You have to pass it 70% at the youngest age bracket. I'm 31. Passing at an 18-year-old standard was slightly intimidating. But that went fine. We got my date to go. I get there. I pull up, and you see these ginormous towers that you're supposed to jump off of. And I'm just like, holy crap, what have I done?
So you have to jump off a tower?
You jump off of multiple things while you're there.
I don't know. I'm scared of heights, first of all. But I think that going out of a plane, but I'm not scared of flying. So I don't get freaked out like if you look out and you're like, oh, there's clouds and everything looks small. So I almost feel like jumping out of a plane would be easier than jumping off of a tower. So I feel like the tower's like, oh, wow, I'm really, like you're I don't know. That just makes me have anxiety already. So, okay, I'm sorry to interrupt. So you have to go jump off of these towers.
Yes. So we actually ended up not jumping off the big towers that we seen when I pulled up. They have nixed those due to issues. But there are these smaller towers there that you almost like zip line out of.
Okay.
So you have to take the initial plunge, and then while you're falling to the earth, something catches you, and then you ride this line down the rest of the way. Just so that you can get the mechanics that go into exiting the aircraft down pat. And basically, the height that they put these towers at, there's something in your brain that if you are deathly afraid of heights and you won't go at this height is the cutoff. So right where they are is like, okay, you're either going to do it or you're not.
Right.
So
that's
you're
probably where I would go. I'm not.
So you're either going to be able to overcome that fear or you're not. So at these towers, you jump out, you exit, and then you zip line down, and that's where they can cut some people who are like, heck no, and then they're done.
Yeah, like I don't know if you noticed, but I actually passed out and fell.
Right.
That would be me.
And you do it repetitively. You do it with what they call Hollywood, which is just the chutes, and then you do it in what they call like combat, like a combat jump, and you have a full load of combat gear, which is over 100 and something pounds on you, and you're jumping and exiting like that. So it's a lot. So you go through that, and then it comes to, which they call Tower Week. And then it comes to your third and final week, which is Jump Week, when you actually are rigging up and you are jumping out of the aircraft, which is a whole nother feeling all in itself. So my very first jump, I get in the aircraft, and you're sitting in a harness shed all rigged up with all this stuff on. I sat there for about 11 hours, and you can't take anything off. You can't go to the bathroom.
What?
No.
What kind of crazy hazing is this?
You sit there in silence. I sat there for about 11 hours with it fully rigged up, and you just sit there and you stare at a wall. And it's quiet, and you have to pee, but you can't get up and go pee. So you're just like waiting. You finally load the aircraft. You go out. They circle out. They have your line, and they tell you to hook up. You stand up. You hook your line to the static line, and then you have one hand on your reserve, and then your main is on your back. And you're standing there, and you're waiting for them to say, green light, go. And when you get up there, they smack you. You're standing in the doorway on the edge of this plane, and you're looking out, and you see the land below you, the hills, the clouds. You hear the engine from the aircraft and the wind just rushing by, and you're like, oh crap, oh crap, oh crap, oh crap. And I remember standing there, and I am praying out loud, because it's so loud, and I'm praying out loud, and I'm like, Lord, I know that I am fearfully and wonderfully made, but if I wasn't made for this, I'm going to be seeing you in just a second.
Oh, gosh.
And so then they're like, green light, go, and they smack you on the bottom, and you just whoosh. And then you have your head down, and you're bent, and you're counting to 6,000. Like, you're like 1,000, 2,000, 3,000, all the way to 6,000. And at 6,000, you should feel your chute come out and it catch air and open up. And at that time, you pull up, you look, you check everything, you gain canopy control. And then you have about 2 to 3 seconds where you get to actually take a deep breath, look around, enjoy the quiet and stillness, because you hear nothing. It is silent, and it is beautiful. And then after 3 seconds, you have to start freaking out again and prepare to hit the ground, because you have to land a certain way, or you have accidents and you break things, and
which is actually what happened. So, when I saw you come into the building, and I have to say that you did look a bit like an amputee. She is, you have this, it's really a fantastic invention that I didn't know exists. So, which is helping you get along, because you ended up, what happened? Tell us what happened.
So I was on my third of 5 jumps, and it was a Hollywood jump, so I didn't have the full combat run alone, thankfully, and I had a malfunction with my main chute. It exited, it came out, but it did kind of what they call a cigarette roll. So it did this number in the wind, and it never caught air or opened. And so
I didn't know this.
And so You do have a reserve that you pull if there's an issue, but you're supposed to work first to fix the issue.
Mm-hmm.
I guess I forgot that it was there, and my whole focus was get this thing to open because it had twisted and my head was down, so I'm constantly pulling, trying to get it to unravel, to open, and I worked on it too long before. And I did eventually get it to open, but by the time it opened and I felt it catch wind, I looked around and I was hitting the ground. So it
Oh my gosh.
enough to slow me down.
To save your life.
To save my life.
Thank you, Jesus.
God had his hand all over me that day. It was totally a God thing because otherwise it's 1,250 feet in the air that you're falling. And it takes no time.
I was about to ask the time frame.
A fall from that height would kill you.
Oh, yeah. No doubt.
Yeah.
No doubt.
So it was such a God thing. And he he wrapped me up and just let me hit the ground. And I walked away with a broken ankle.
That is incredible.
Yes.
Incredible. Whew. So, are you going to do it again?
Yes. The goal is if I go back within 180 days, if my physical therapy goes well and I'm able to put enough weight on it then to where I can jump and land properly, if I go back within 180 days, I only have 2 more jumps to complete and I will graduate. If not, then I have to start over from day 1 and do all 3 weeks of it again. And nobody wants to do that. So
No, this is very physically demanding.
It really is. It really is. It's one of the most challenging things I think I've ever done in my life, physically.
Wow.
So, and not only that, but mentally as well, because you're away from your family for so long, and then I had to quarantine 2 weeks before that. So I had to stay on Fort McClellan, like isolated to a room by myself, and then you get there and you have people constantly yelling at you, and you're up, like 3:30, 4 in the morning. You're not getting in till really late. You're outside in the elements all day. You're running everywhere you go. You have all this equipment on all the time. So it's very taxing on you physically, mentally, emotionally. I know there were days that I called home and I told Russ, I was like, I don't know if I can do this. I don't know if I want to do this anymore. Yeah. I was just so ready to come home. And I remember thinking on jump week when I got up in the aircraft, I was like, what are you doing here? You're a mom. Yeah. You have a 3-year-old son and he needs you. Like, what if something happens to you? And I'm like, I have no business being up here. But then you do it and you land and you get all your crap and you just walk off and you feel 10 foot tall. Yeah. Because you're like, I just jumped out of an airplane. Yeah. And it's such a cool thing and it's so amazing. And then at the same time, you tell yourself, my child can say, I can do anything. My mom can jump out of airplanes. Yeah. Like, if she can do this, I can do anything. Yeah. I just have to put in the work. Yeah. And I want him to always have and know that he's capable of doing anything, that there is nothing, no obstacle in his way, regardless of his gender or his size or his speed or anything that he can't overcome and do. Yes.
Oh, I love that. That's so good. I got like teary-eyed thinking about it because that was one thing I want to talk about is Asher, because he's my little buddy. I love that baby. So, and this is going to kind of go into, I know that your faith and y'all's involvement in your church is huge. Your husband is a pastor, associate pastor. Associate pastor. And Russ is he's a good dude.
Russ is so great.
Yes. We lucked out. We got good hubbies.
We really did.
And they're a lot alike in a lot of ways.
Very similar. They balance us out very well because you can't have 2 very outgoing personalities in one relationship.
No,
otherwise there's
work.
A lot of chaos. Yes. So you gotta have someone there to help balance you and mellow you out at times.
But you know what's funny? Okay, so and I'm gonna talk about Russ like he's not here. Is that he, to me, when I watch Hometown,
Oh,
Ben
yeah.
and Aaron, Ben sounds just like him. It's the same voice, and it took me forever to get over it. Where I'm like, why is Russ talking through this big burly man's? I mean, it's so funny. Do you think it sounds like him?
I think they sound very similar.
I mean, it's crazy to me.
I think they sound very similar.
So if y'all don't know Hometown, you want to hear what Russ sounds like, you could go anyway. So, all right. So I want to talk about Asher, because that is a story in a testimony all within itself. So, when we first met, you and Russ had been married for, I don't know,
like maybe 2 years.
2 years or so.
2 years.
And I always knew that you wanted to be a mom. You know, you just have that. You can just look at, you're supposed to be a mom, and Russ obviously is just a man's man, and and I know y'all had that you had some trouble, and so, which is pretty common. I know so many people who just struggle with infertility issues and who have felt desperate.
Yes.
And alone, and like it wasn't going to happen, and you received some pretty devastating news. If my memory serves me correctly, and if you don't mind, I'd love for you to share that story with everybody, because it has just the most beautiful outcome ever. It does.
So yeah, so this is just totally a God thing.
Yeah.
We had been married. We knew before we got married that we wanted to just be us for a little while after getting married. We wanted to enjoy being newlyweds, establishing our home, building our finances. We wanted to be as responsible and mature as we could before bringing another life into this world, because it's such a huge responsibility. I think it's one of the biggest legacies that we will ever leave are our children. And so we just really wanted to be very responsible with that and not take it very lightly. So we enjoyed being newlyweds, and then we finally decided, me before him, that it was time.
Yes.
And so I was like, babe, it's time. We need to have a baby. And he was like, no, it's not time. We can put it off a little while. And I was like, no, I want one. And he was like, so, he finally, after long periods of me being like, yes, baby. And he was like, okay, yes, I agree. I think it's time. I'm ready if you're ready. So, and I won't go into the details of that. But,
so that whole process starts.
We're keeping this a G-rated podcast. But we started trying to have a baby, and like my mom has a bajillion kids. Like, she is the most fertile individual on the planet Earth. So I thought getting pregnant would be like so easy. Yeah. Like one time, and oh God, look, we're pregnant!
Yes.
Yay! And to my surprise, to our surprise, it just didn't happen like that. Shockingly enough. And so we thought, well, let's, maybe take a little bit of time. So we kept trying, and then nothing. And, months after months go by and nothing. And I'm like, what's wrong? And so then we're like, well, maybe there's something wrong with one of us. So we go to the doctor, and my doctor starts running some tests and looking, and so he's like, well, I want to go in, and I want to do a little exploring right now, because what I'm seeing right here doesn't kind of feel right. He was like, so let's go and do this. So we went in and did like a laparoscopic surgery, I think is what it's called, and he found that both of my fallopian tubes were 100% blocked. He ran dye through, and nothing. Absolutely nothing.
So that means your egg cannot come out.
Exactly. Nothing can get to my egg. The egg cannot come out. There is just nothing going anywhere.
That's pretty devastating.
Yes. And there's nothing that they could do. So he was like, well, we could do some infertility treatments, all of this kind of thing. There are lots of options, but none of them have very good percentages. They're very costly, and our insurance would not cover that. And so we talked about it, and we prayed about it, we cried about it, and finally I think I had just in my mind thought, well, I'm just not going to be a mom. If this is just not what God has in the cards for me, then, he will provide me fulfillment in another way.
Right.
But then I think Russ wasn't ready to give up yet. So I think it was him who had said, well, why don't we talk to your dad and we ask our church to pray over us and anoint us with oil? And because we have read tons of scripture where prayer and just belief in what God can do can move mountains, just having a little bit of faith.
Faith of a mustard seed.
Yeah.
That's right.
And so I was like, you know what? Yeah, let's do that. Mm-hmm. So we went to my dad. We said, hey.
Your dad's a pastor, too.
My dad is the pastor of our church.
We failed to mention that earlier.
My dad is the pastor of our church. He's such a wonderful man. Yes. Loves the Lord. And so.
Loves kids.
Oh,
my gosh.
Loves people. If you've ever met my dad, then you've never gotten away in under 30 minutes because he's going to talk to you.
And he's going to hug you, probably.
Yes. And
I don't know how he's dealt with Corona, because he's like your dad's like a.
My dad does not know what personal space is.
That's okay.
And he's a very big, burly, 6'6" man who will just wrap you up in a heartbeat.
Yes.
And he's such a big teddy bear.
He is.
And just loves people, has a heart for people, and just, seeing them grow and helping them. And so we went to him and we said, hey, this is what God has laid on our heart in light of where we are. Mm-hmm.
Because you needed a miracle.
We did. I mean, that's what it was going to take. And we knew at that time that's what it was going to take. And he loved it. He was like, of course. So at the end of one of our services, he was like, hey, we want to do something special. We believe in the laying on of hands. We believe in the anointing of oil. We believe in the power of God and what he can do, that nothing is beyond his reach. And if you would like to take part in this, great. If not, then service has concluded and you are welcome to leave.
Yeah.
So they brought us forward, and everyone in our church, I don't think there was a single person who left that day, came up. They anointed us with oil. I'm going to get teary.
That's okay. This is good.
I could feel what felt like a million hands touching me, praying over me, and I could feel the Spirit just coming over my body as these people cried out to God on our behalf for what the desire of our heart was.
Yeah.
And we left there that day, and it just felt different.
Yeah.
So we went to church, and we were still trying. We're like, we're not going to give up. So we're trying. We are still going to church. We're praying. We go to church one night. We're on Wednesday nights. We were getting in a big circle, and we were having prayer before we started church. Well, the man that we would later ask to be our son's godfather held my hand in the prayer circle that night. Mm-hmm. And this was before we ever knew anything. Mm-hmm. And he said he just felt something different about me that night when he touched my hand. So I go home. I was late, and I was like, I had not even really paid attention. And I was like, man, I'm late. This is weird. There's a lot of stuff going on at work right now. I may just be stressed, and you don't want to set yourself up for disappointment. So in your mind, you're automatically just trying to think of all the reasons of what it could be.
Right.
Neglecting what you've prayed for and asked for this whole time. And so I'm just like, well, let's just take a test. Mm-hmm. So I took a test. And
does Russ know?
Russ is upstairs in his study, and he's studying and reading and doing something, and I'm downstairs, and I'm going about cleaning and doing my housework, and then I'm like, oh, I gotta go check, So I go in there, and I look, and oh my gosh. And I'm like, this says I'm gonna have a baby. And I didn't believe it. Like, it's like, almost like it wasn't real. So I took another one.
Yeah.
And I was like, this can't be right. So I took another one, and I wait. This whole time he's upstairs, and he's oblivious to the whole
You haven't
thing.
even told him you're taking a test.
No. And so he's just sitting upstairs, and I take another one, and it comes back the same way. And I remember walking up the 13 stairs at our house to his office, and I walk in his office, and like I have tears coming down my face, and he looks at me in horror, like, "Oh my gosh, what's wrong?" I just set it on his desk, and he looks up at me, and I look at him, and I'm just nodding my head. And he jumps up and he grabs me, and we are just sitting there holding each other, squalling, just in pure joy and delight.
Yeah.
And so we don't tell anybody yet. We don't tell anyone yet because there are a lot of things that can go into this because this is just unheard of.
Yeah. It's a miracle.
Yes.
It's a miracle.
And so we go to the doctor, and he's like, "You are." And I'm like, "Oh my gosh." He was like, "But there are some things that we need to check. My concern is that it is caught in your tubes, in your fallopian tubes, that they met, but it was in the in-between.
Right.
It's not where it needs to be. And if that is the case, then you will be having a tubal pregnancy, and you will need to get an abortion because it will kill you."
Yeah.
And I remember us laying in bed one night talking about that. Well, what if it is? Because we are not advocates of abortion. We are advocates for life.
Right.
And we believe that all life has a purpose.
Right.
And so we were like, well, what are we going to do? What if this is the case? And, he goes, "I know this is hard, but I think if God wants us to have a baby, then he's going to make it work. I don't think we take that away. I think he should be the one to take it away."
Right.
So we were like, okay, regardless of where it is, this is what we're going to do.
Yeah.
This is how it's going to happen. So the date come for us to go and to see if we could hear a heartbeat. Because if we could hear a heartbeat, then that meant it was in the right place. So we go to our appointment. We're in there, laying there, the cold jelly on your belly. And
Yes.
We are a nervous wreck. And then all of a sudden you hear the strongest,
I know that sound.
most beautiful heartbeat. It was the most beautiful sound I'd ever heard in the whole world. And she goes, "He's right where he needs to be, and he's strong."
Yes.
I was like, "Thank you, God."
Yeah.
So we left there, and I'm like, we're a mom and a dad, and so from there, the belly grew, and we welcomed our son Asher into the world in August.
You made an announcement like at Christmas.
Oh, we did.
It was beautiful.
So what we did at Christmas, we took some pictures and stuff, but what we did, the way we told our family, my dad and our church family was at Christmas time, we have a tree in our auditorium, and there are stuff is decorated all nice. And so we had slipped into service early that morning and slipped a little box under the Christmas tree, like a little gift. And towards I don't know if it was the beginning or the end of service, I really can't remember. We said we had a gift that we would like to give our dad, my dad. So the whole church is there and no one knows. And so we get the gift out from under the tree and we give it to my dad.
Oh.
And my dad opens the box and pulls out the sonogram picture of Asher and just bursts into tears.
Oh, I couldn't have handled it. I could not have handled seeing your dad. I can see it. I know what happened.
And
oh my gosh.
of course, he's not showing it to anyone else in the church. So everybody's wondering why my dad is squeezing me and crying. And,
Yes.
and then he turns around and he shows everyone our sonogram picture to all the people who had laid hands on us and prayed for this miracle. Yeah. And when I tell you, there was the biggest shout and outcry of praise in our church at that moment. It was... There's no doubt in my mind that the realms of heaven were shouting and praising at the same time, and we were heard all over. Yeah. Because it was so amazing to see this miracle, this answer to prayer. Yeah. And to share it with our church and our family in that way was amazing.
And how long was it? I don't know the time frame from when you guys went to the church and went to your church and said, we want to be prayed over, until when you found out you're pregnant.
We found out within like a month. It was a month. Within 1 month, we were pregnant. From the time hands were laid on us and we were prayed over, within a month, we were pregnant.
That's just so incredible. I'm so glad you shared that, because like I said, I've known bits and pieces of the story, but I haven't heard the whole thing, and I just feel like there's somebody out there that's that can relate to this and that needs to hear, hey, miracles happen.
They do.
They really
happen.
do.
And the crazy thing is, miracles happen every single day, but we are oblivious to them. The fact that our eyes open every morning and we take a breath, that in itself is a miracle.
It is.
The fact that there is food on your table and you're provided for, that is a miracle. Yeah. But we're so just used to those things.
Ungrateful. In a lot of ways. I know that's probably a little harsh, but...
Well, but I mean, yes and no, but it's the everyday.
We're blessed and we don't realize it.
The everyday is a miracle, because what you enjoy every day is what someone else is praying for right now. Yeah. Those screaming kids, you're getting ready for school every morning, threatening their life.
Yeah.
There's a woman out there who would give anything to be taking her child to school. Yeah. You know?
Yeah.
So it's the little things.
And I'll never forget the very first picture I saw of Asher was your dad posted. And he was holding him, that big old hand, you know, and he's just like, just this little baby. And he was smiling so big. I mean, it was a bright-eyed, unmistakable that he was looking at your daddy and just in pure joy. And I thought, that's the most perfect, because Asher means happy.
Asher means happiness.
And I just thought, it's just perfect. And he is just the sweetest little thing. I know he's wild right now. We were talking about that prior to recording. But all boy, you know, keep you on your toes. But he's always just had this little sweet spirit about him. And I know he loves music and sports, and he's just this perfect blend of you and Russ. You know, sometimes I look at him and I'll go, oh my God, he looks just like Aqua. And then sometimes I'll look at him and I'm like, was that Russell? I mean, like, you know, it is. It's so funny to see, and I just love y'all, and I love your story and your courage and your commitment to your family and to God and your country, and I think that you're just an inspiration to me and to so many other people, and I'm proud to call you friend. So
me too.
And I normally do a sign off on the podcast and say, you know, because if you want to get in touch with Aqua or whatever. So are you still in, because I know you were doing some recruiting back in the day. Is that something that you would, if people had questions about the Guard, if they could get in touch with you? So how would somebody, if they had a question, they wanted to talk to you about a career in the Guard, how would they do that?
So my Instagram handle is Moxie Military Mom. So you can always hit me up there. I have the Facebook page, Aqua Addison. And those are really the best two ways to get in touch with me. Yeah. So. Or
if you want to visit their church and.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, yes. Please visit our church. We go to Young's Chapel, Congregational Methodist Church. It is out on Highway 278, like you're going towards Piedmont. We consider ourselves to be like a small country church. We're very close knit. Such great people there. And we're growing, and we have some amazing things in store for 2021. Yeah. I'm so excited about what God is doing there and doing through those people, and just their heart and their desire to serve. And so this year is going to be amazing.
I really believe that, I'm going to try not to get emotional, but I believe that God's going to show out for his people this year.
Yes.
I really do. I have a word about that, and I have had a word about that, because, you know, with the stuff that we've been going through with Josh, my husband, but God keeps answering my prayers about that before I can even complete them. You know what I'm saying? Before I even have a chance. And I was, this happened the other day, and I said, Lord, why? How did you met that need before I even had a chance to ask? And I just heard that it's because I'm supposed to tell my story. You have to tell your story. You have to tell your story. Because I think that the times that we're in right now, it's not, I don't think that this is left versus right, Republican versus Democrat. I think that we're just in a spiritual warfare.
Yes.
And I think that what we need is a lot more Jesus.
A lot more
and
Jesus.
a lot less TV and a lot less media. And I think that God is going to show out for his people this year, because that's how you win over.
That's right.
It's how you win over souls. That's how we really change the country.
Yeah.
That's how we heal. And so I'm excited for 2021. We've got some big mountains to climb ourselves, but he just keeps lighting our path and showing us the way. And so I just have complete peace about everything.
And if I can,
yeah,
to elaborate on, I agree with you 100%. This is going to be an amazing year, and God is going to do great things. We are in an age where communication has never been easier. There are so many forms and modes of communication, yet we are speaking to each other less.
Yeah.
And one of the greatest gifts that God has given us to tell others about him and to share love and mercy is our testimony, is our story.
Yes.
It's all about telling and sharing your story, because God places you in the situations and circumstances of your life for a reason. You don't just go through things willy-nilly. It's because at some point later, he is going to introduce you to someone who is right where you were previously. Mm-hmm. And you can speak life into that person.
Yeah.
You can help them. And I just think that this year is going to be such a year of open communication and of speaking life and speaking truth and sharing with one another. It's gonna be full of great things, and I just can't wait.
I know. I'm excited. I couldn't agree more. I really believe that we're going to be restored and healed, and I think we're going to see miracles every day. Like you said, you open your eyes and look around, because they're there. And I'm super excited. And are y'all doing in-service church?
We are.
Yeah.
We do in-service church. Right now we have Sunday school and our Sunday morning services. Mm-hmm. Sunday morning services start at 11. Mm-hmm. Our sanctuary is sanitized after every service. We have sanitation sprayers that go through. We go through all the pews, all the rooms, everything that's touched. We have a cleaning service that comes in every week, a cleaner who comes in every week and cleans also in between services. Masks. We check temperatures at the door when you come through. So we are definitely taking all the precautions, because everyone's safety, first and foremost, we want you to come to a place to worship the Lord where you feel safe.
Yes.
Because it's hard to worship when you're in fear, and God did not give us a sense of fear. So we are just wiping that clear at the door. So we are definitely doing all the things that we can to do that.
That's awesome. Well, thank you so much
Thank
for
you for
coming.
having me.
I've really enjoyed it. And, it's funny because we started and I said, I probably should prepare more for these interviews. But I knew with Aqua, I was like, she'll just run with it. I knew because her story is so amazing. And I just... So thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for letting me come.
Yeah.
I was nervous, but this has been great.
It has. So before we wrap up, I've just got to say, please like and subscribe to this podcast. If you could give me a 5-star rating, that would be great to help us spread God's love and our message of hope and healing for this year. And of course, we're going to talk all things real estate. And if you have any real estate needs, if you're looking to buy or sell, please consider using J&G Real Estate Solutions. Our team is fabulous. We're buying houses to flip. We're buying houses to hold as rental property. And then, of course, we work with people every day who are just looking for, that next house with you know, you never know. You never know. It's not time yet. It's
We've got
not time
lots of
yet.
next houses with her.
So you can find us online, jngrealestate.com. Of course, we're all on social media. And you can follow me on Instagram at our.flipping.life, or be sure to like our Facebook page, Our Flipping Life. So that's it for today's episode of My Flipping Podcast. We'll see you guys next time. Bye.